A Day in a One-Room School, filmed at the Richmond Little Red Schoolhouse in Brighton Township, Beaver County, Pennsylvania, in October 1976 as a bicentennial documentary for the Beaver County Retired Public School Employees Association. It was financed by the Pennsylvania Bicentennial Commission along with the Beaver County Bicentennial Commission. The Beaver County Commissioners consisting of George Pettibon, Eugene Atkinson, and Eli Korak. State Senator James Ross served as liaison between the Beaver County Bicentennial Commission and the State Bicentennial Commission. Edward Solly of Beaver Falls was chairman of the Beaver County Bicentennial Commission, while George Thorne served as narrator of the film and served as liaison between the county project and TV station WQED, Channel 13, PBS, Pittsburgh, PA. The part of the stern schoolmaster of the time, about 1850, was played by C. Lloyd Deffenbaugh, who was at the time president of the Beaver County Retired Public School Employees Association. The personnel of the students who comprised a class of the one-room school included one pupil from each of the school districts in Beaver County. The action of the movie included one full day at the beginning of the school term, which lasted about 4 months at that time in history. School began after harvest about early November and lasted until late March so the pupils could be available on the farms for the planting season. A typical day in school at that time included the reading of 10 or more verses from the Bible, the repeating of the Lord's Prayer, an occasional hymn or patriotic song, usually followed by some quotations and poetry. This was all before the day of the flag salute. Often a little singing took place in the morning or to begin the afternoon session if the teacher was so minded. The pupils were arranged in groups according to ability more often than by grades as today. This made it more convenient for the teacher to get all groups to recite during the day. The room usually had a pot-bellied coal or wood stove in the center of the room for heat. Each pupil's parents provided the fuel. Those whose parents provided the most fuel sat nearest the stove, while those whose parents provided little or none at all sat the farthest away. Pupils had to provide their own slates and pencils, as most of their ciphering was done on slates because paper was very expensive and could be used but once. Lunches were brought in little baskets or wrapped in a cloth. Lunch pails were very rare at the time. When pupils became thirsty, they went to the water bucket and used the common dipper for a drink. Wooden pegs in the back of the room held the wraps of the pupils, while the shelves above them were used for lunches. The blackboards were used daily, as well as the roller maps, which operated much like window blinds. Mounted kerosene lamps were usable in case light was needed. When the weather was bad, pupils could be taken to school on horseback or by sled. The schoolhouse was also used as a community center during days gone by. It was often used for pie socials, box socials, spelling bees, singing schools, literary programs, religious meetings as Sunday school and church services, and political meetings were held here. Unlike our present-day schools, there were very few physical conveniences available. Heat was provided by the pot-bellied stove mentioned before, while toilet facilities were located outside, one for the boys and another for the girls, usually located far apart and, needless to say, very, very cold in winter. Each school day provided a mid-morning recess, a 1-hour lunch period, and a mid-afternoon recess. School was dismissed at 4 o'clock. The pay of teachers was very unfair. Women teachers were paid $5 a month, while the men teachers were paid $24 per month. Great assistance was provided in the making of the film by the members of the Richmond Little Red Schoolhouse Association and the following members of the Beaver County unit of the Pennsylvania Retired School Employees Association: Mr. Robert O. Robertson, Mrs. Gertrude Bonzo, Mrs. Margaret Ross, Mrs. Doris Gillespie, Mrs. Jane Smida, the late Mrs. Grace McDaniel, and the late Mrs. Adeline McKee. The schoolmaster was played by C. Lloyd Deffenbaugh. The film is available from TV station WQED, Channel 13, Pittsburgh, and the Beaver County Intermediate Unit, part of the Beaver County School System at Monaca, Pennsylvania.
You to stay up there for a little while because your mother's away.
October 1910. My name is Joseph Meade. I'm 60 years old. I'm writing this because it's my intention to leave a record for future generations. A record of what life was like in my generation. Life changes, but in a great many ways it stays the same.
So perhaps my recollections can help the reader of this reflect on what has changed and what has remained the same. I suppose my memories begin with my first few years at school. In my mind it is always fall, filled with falling leaves, the smell of harvest, and the sound of the school bell. But most of all, school meant Mr. Deffenbaugh. I never realized it then, but a teacher's life was a busy one. In a one-room school, the teacher was responsible for everything and everybody. He was not only teacher, but janitor, nurse, counselor, and sometimes friend. Mr. Deffenbaugh's day began long before ours, stoking the potbelly stove and preparing the day's lessons. From the fall to the spring, the schoolhouse was the teacher's domain and was run as firmly and as strictly as a captain runs a ship. We were a rather ragtag group, boys and girls of all ages and sizes. And mornings before school began, we played and talked before the serious business of our education began. Most of us walked to school, but those of us who lived rather far, or were lucky, came on horseback. The friends I made back in those days are still my friends. When you spend most of your days sharing the same experiences, relationships are easy and binding. And so the school day began, with Mr. Deffenbaugh ushering us inside. We all knew each other and Mr. Deffenbaugh, but occasionally there was a new face, and on this particular day, we noticed a young girl we had never seen before. Mr. Deffenbaugh noticed her too. I don't suppose there is anything as painful or as frightening as your first day at a new school.
What's your name?
I'm Emily Ross, sir.
You new in this community? Are you a new student today?
Yes, I am, sir.
Why didn't you go to school here last year?
Because it was too far to walk, and we didn't have any horse.
Welcome, and we'll try to make you feel at home. Come in and we'll find somebody to take care of your wraps and show you where to sit.
There was never any question in our minds as to who ran the school. For only 16 weeks a year, Mr. Deffenbaugh dominated the schoolhouse and our lives. and he operated according to a few rules which were simple but inflexible.
Good
The
morning,
opening ritual was
children.
unchanging.
Welcome to the Richmond Little Red Schoolhouse. My name is Mr. Deffenbaugh, and I will be your teacher for this school term. And I think we can work together very well. Before we start, I would like to give you a few rules that I like to run my room with. I want you to do the following things. Raise your hand to speak. Stand up when speaking. Address your teacher as sir. Say please, thank you, and excuse me at the proper times. Be quiet during school hours. And get permission to leave your seat. Now, you will all have to have your own books and slate pencil, and pencil. And you have to take care of your own. Now, to open our school this morning, I would like to read from the Bible 3 or 4 verses that I think are very appropriate for you to help make you better boys and girls. I'll read from Corinthians. When I was a child, I spake as a child. I understood as a child. I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things.
To Mr. Deffenbaugh, like most people in those days, the Bible was part of his life. Class officially began with a Bible reading. In those days, the school book and the good book were companions.
Remain standing and we'll sing the first verse of America. My country, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside, let freedom ring. Now, I usually like to have some quotations in the morning at the beginning of school, and does anyone have a good quotation for us this morning?
Do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
Very good. Somebody else have one? Yes.
Don't trouble with trouble until trouble troubles you.
Good. Here we one.
Early to bed and early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise.
Do you know who said that one? Benjamin Franklin. Does anybody have any other ones? Well, you may be seated. We'll call the roll and see who all's here. Now, I have your names that were given to me by the school board, so I shall call those names. And if you're here, say, present, sir. Jeffrey.
Present, sir.
Richard.
Present, sir.
Joseph.
Present, sir.
Lena.
Present, sir.
Willie.
Present, sir.
Sandy.
Present, sir.
Mike.
Present, sir.
And, oh yes, Emily.
Present, sir.
Henry. Henry? Henry's not here, it seems. Does anybody know anything about Henry? Yes.
Sir, he is helping his paw pick potatoes.
He's helping his pa pick potatoes. Did they say when he'd be in?
He will be in a couple of days.
Well, good. Thank you.
With the calling of the roll, it was obvious that for some children, school was not the major experience of their childhood. It was fall, the harvest season, and those children of farm families often had to stay and help with the harvest, and then attempt to make up the work during the long winter.
Oh, let's see if I missed anybody. Did I miss anybody? I like poetry, and I think boys and girls ought to learn some poetry. This morning, I would like for you to learn a poem, a very short one, a small one, and it's an easy one. By little drops of water and little grains of sand, make the mighty ocean and the pleasant land. Listen to it. Little drops of water, little grains of sand, make the mighty ocean and the pleasant land. I'll say a line and you say a line after me. Little drops of water,
Little drops of water,
little grains of sand,
little grains of sand,
make the mighty ocean
make the mighty ocean
and the pleasant land.
and the pleasant land.
Now let's do it over. We'll do the whole thing together. Little drops of water, little grains of sand, make the mighty ocean and the pleasant land. Little deeds of kindness, little words of love, help to make the happy earth like to heaven above. Let's try to say that verse now. I'll say a line and then you say it after me. Little deeds of kindness,
Little deeds of kindness,
little words of love,
little words of love,
help to make the happy earth
help to make the happy earth
like to heaven above.
like to heaven above.
Now,
We were quite in awe of Mr. Deffenbaugh. He seemed to know everything. He seemed to be interested in everything, but especially in poetry. Every class began with a poetry lesson, usually with a poem that had a moral, and always the recitation, the repetition, the repetition. It was hard not to memorize because we repeated and recited so many times as a group and as individuals. And if you kept your ears open, you would have heard everything many times before from the older children.
Now, is there somebody who would like to say that for us? Would you like to say it for me? Let's hear you say the first verse. Stand up.
Little drops of water, little grains of sand, make the mighty ocean and the pleasant land.
That's very good. He's going to be a real good Group 1 member here in the class.
David Mullins always had trouble with his dog, Patches. It happened every year. It seemed Patches followed him to school at the beginning of every term until Patches figured about the 3rd or 4th week that David really was going to return home.
Everybody busy? Everybody working? You have much work to do. Now listen, young man, that dog cannot come into the schoolhouse.
I'm sorry, sir, but he follows me everywhere and he just won't go home.
I'm sorry he cannot come into the school. You keep him outside today, tie him up out there and take him home tonight and leave him there. Don't bring him tomorrow. Tie him at home. We cannot have a dog in the schoolhouse. So take care of it. Put your books down on that desk and take care of it and get back in as soon as you're through.
Thank you, sir.
For our first reading class this morning, I'd like to have Group 2 come to the reading bench, bring your books, and we'll see how well you can read. Oh, by the way, Emily, you come up and join this group because we want to hear you read too. Now, I'm going to ask you to read something from your book, but when you do, I want you to tell me your name because I don't know your names yet, and I have to learn what your name is before I can call you. So let's start over here. Would you read something for me?
Seed.
We were at all different levels of ability, and Mr. Deffenbaugh had to be a good organizer to keep everybody busy. Usually we worked in groups. As I watched the beginning readers, I recalled my first stumbling attempts at the alphabet, the sentence, the paragraph, and the story, not to mention punctuation. Still, since we were all in this together, there was a feeling of security, And then, too, Mr. Devenbaugh would always ask one of the other students to help the younger ones. It made it easier to ask questions.
Emily, see what you can do.
B. The life to man, God's book attend.
Read that again.
B. The life to man, God's book attend.
That's good, Emily. You go back to your seat and you can read with group 3.
Thank you, sir.
Now let's hear some more up here. Jill?
8. My broken heart shall never part.
We didn't work with pencil and paper in those days. All of our writing and calculating was done on slates. It may seem awkward now, but it saved a lot of money for paper that would only be used once. And in those days, thrift was not just a virtue, but a necessity.
That's enough of that. What do you got? Now let's get ready for our arithmetic lessons this morning. Group 4, you will find problems on the blackboard to copy and to work on your slates. Group 3, there's a set of problems for you up here also. In Group 2, you have to do some tables, of 4 times tables. Beginners, I want to hear you see if we can count. Come over to the bench here and we'll see if we can learn to count. Yes, Willie, what's the problem? You may be excused. Now, we're going to learn to count today, or I want to find out if you can count. So let's hear you count as best you can. Tell me your name so I know who you are. Richard? All right, stand up, Richard, and see how well you can count for me.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
That's very good. That's very good. See what you can do, young fella. What's your name?
Jeff.
Jeff? All right, Jeff.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
That's very good. That's very good. See what you can do. What's your name?
Jason.
Jason. Well, let's hear you count.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
That's good. Well, Willie, what's the problem?
Sir, there's an outhouse. There's a hornet's nest in the outhouse.
A hornet's nest in the outhouse.
Yes, sir.
Are there any hornets flying around out there?
I don't think so, sir.
Well, if you think you can do it, go out and see if you can knock the thing down. If there's no hornets there, possibly there's done in a minute. It's an old nest. You knock it down and bring it in.
Yes, sir.
Let's hear you.
Mr. Devenbaugh could take just about any experience and teach us something from it. When the weather was good, we sometimes went on walks through the woods, and he would point out birds and flowers and trees and explain how they all depended on each other and how we depended on them.
8, 9, 10.
9 and 10. That's pretty good. Let's count them all together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's very good. Well, Willie, what did you find?
Sir, there's a wasp nest, not a hornet's nest.
A wasp nest. Well, you didn't get stung, did you?
No, sir.
Well, there weren't any in it. This is not a hornet's nest, as somebody says. He said this is a wasp's nest. And the difference is that a wasp's nest is flat like this, and the hornet's nest is a big round, like a big round ball. And the hornet's nest is usually fastened onto the branch, a low branch of a tree or a bush out in the open, pretty low to the ground. And wasps are long and slim, and sometimes hornets are pretty fat, and the hornets are pretty yellow or golden color. Wasps are around houses and outbuildings and places where they are protected, like under the roof. Well, they'll really take that back to your seat, and thank you for a job well done. Nobody will get stung now. You people may go back to your seats and get your slates and pencils. And Cindy, would you please go over and help these people to make ones, show each one of them how to make a one. And then I want them to practice ones all over one side of their slate. Everybody else should be busy working. You'll have much work to do. There's no time to loaf. Willie, what's the problem back there?
I was pulling her hair.
Well, we don't pull hair in school. We're here to work. You take your slate and pencil and come up here and sit on the dumpster stool where you belong.
Yes, sir.
And stay there until I tell you to take your seat. Shame on you.
Most of the time, we behaved ourselves like the perfect ladies and gentlemen Mr. Deffenbaugh and our parents wanted us to be. But sometimes we just couldn't help acting up. We soon learned that acting up just wasn't worth it. Mr. Deffenbaugh believed in order, and if he didn't get it, we were quick to know it.
I'll leave it. That'll be enough of that. What's the idea? I don't want any more of that. Get your book. And come up here and stand in the corner and think about what you've done for a little while. Now it's time for arithmetic, and we're going to review some of our multiplication tables so I can find out what you know. I don't know what you can do. So I'm going to have you say this, the two tables and the second group, the third group, and the fourth group, we'll say them all together. After we're through in the second group, we'll write them on their slate. Shall we stand up and recite? 2 times 1 is 2.
2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 3 is 6.
We learned arithmetic the same way we learned everything else, by repetition and by drill. Even today, without slide rule or calculator, I can recite the multiplication tables from 1 through 12.
16. 2 times 9 is 18. 2 times 10 is 20. 2 times 11 is 22. 2 times 12 is 24.
But we really tried to learn. Some of us were smarter than others, some a little slower. Some of us learned special things, and some of us just couldn't seem to memorize some things. But always we memorized, and because of that, those memories stay with me. The memories of fall, the harvest, Mr. Deffenbaugh, and the little red schoolhouse.
Joe, come on down from there. Your mother's home.